This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githui-Yuat. It's Tuesday, October 29th. This is Africa 54. Global human rights groups say Tanzania has seriously undermined democratic freedoms. How babies are benefiting from donations to Kenya's first free human breast milk bank. And a Washington, D.C. area university trusts drones with human organ delivery. Those stories and more coming up, but first, if you've ever been bitten by a venomous snake, you know how life-threatening that can be. Now, experts at the Kenya Snakebite Research and Intervention Center are working to get East Africa's first anti-venom on the market within 5 years. The research is partly funded by the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine. We hear more from Serena Chondre.
Beth Mwende is still mourning the loss of her 3-year-old daughter, Mercy. It was in their hut in Kenya's Kitui County that the girl was bitten by a deadly snake, an all-too-common occurrence in a country where around 700 people are killed by snake bites every year.
She was bitten at night. Around 3 a.m., the child started crying and vomiting. I did not know that it was a snake, so I woke up the next morning and went to the river to fetch water. And on my way back, I met my eldest daughter, who told me my child is not waking up.
Kenya's Snakebite Research and Intervention Center wants to make a difference. It's working on developing East Africa's first anti-venom. It hopes to have the products on the market within 5 years and at a third of the price of imported anti-venoms, which usually cost around $100.
The snake we're about to extract venom from, we call it African puffer. This is the most common snake we come across in Africa. And also, it seems to bite many people because they tend to hide so well, camouflage with the leaves or dry plants.
Researchers study the extracted venom before injecting small amounts into donor animals like sheep. They then produce antibodies which are harvested and purified into anti-venom. There are currently 2 effective anti-venoms available in Kenya from India and Mexico.
Serena Chondre of Reuters reporting. The United Nations Security Council says Somalia's Sanctions Committee has recommended that arms embargo imposed in 1992 must be streamlined, simplified, and updated to reflect the current realities of counter-insurgency in Somalia. Belgian UN ambassador who was briefing the Security Council noted that Somalia is on a positive trajectory with key achievements on the political, economic, humanitarian, and security fronts. However, the envoy noted that the country remains vulnerable to climatic shocks and escalating conflict. Inconsistent funding has also been a challenge in the delivery of humanitarian assistance. Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch say Tanzania is backsliding on freedoms under President John Pombe Magufuli. His administration has been accused of jailing journalists, kidnapping activists, and assaulting political opponents. In 2 separate reports released Monday, Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International detailed how Magufuli's administration had enforced his orders using draconian laws. Critics say Magufuli's rule, which enters its 5th year next month, has been marked by an attack on free speech previously unseen in Tanzania.
Since the election of President John Magufuli as Tanzanian president, how these different categories of people have been targeted in one way or another. Journalists have been arrested, and one good case example is of just journalist Erica Bendera that you all know was arrested end of July, and he was presented in court a few days later. The government has come up with very many laws since 2015, but is also using old laws that were not used for a very long time to target dissent or those who are opposed to its action or speak out against them.
Another watchdog, Reporters Without Borders, has labeled Tanzania's President John Magufuli a press freedom predator and dropped Tanzania 25 places on its annual Press Freedom Index. Scientists are warning that honeybees are dying off, a threat to human survival. Bees' legs and wings carry the pollen that allow crops to flourish, while pesticides protect those plants. They also kill the pollinators, a lesson being learned in Rwanda. Arash Arbasadi has more.
Harsh chemicals meant to boost agricultural output are endangering the honeybee.
Our bees are decimated due to these products that farmers spread on tomatoes and coffee plantations.
Beekeepers say pesticides farmers use drive away or kill their honeybees, dealing a stinging blow to their livelihoods.
Sometimes I open our hives to check when I can harvest, and I find only a few bees alive. Others are dead. Other hives are empty.
Fewer bees means a shortage of honey.
We lost so many customers because honey prices have increased so much.
Gilbert Kanes manages ABDC Limited, one of Rwanda's biggest honey producers. The company exports natural honey to Europe.
Few people can afford our products, and the honey is becoming only for the rich. It wasn't always like this. We are losing our customers.
At the heart of it all, local farmers like Angelique Boomeran spraying their crops to keep pests at bay.
You see that when we spread pesticides, bees immediately have problems and escape. All the bees flee. I think this product we use to kill insects is dangerous for bees.
Boomeran says sometimes the bees come back in a week. But that's little comfort to beekeepers like Jean Sibomana.
I asked the government to stop selling these products that kill bees, ban them, make something else, or else the next generation will only see bees in books.
For its part, the Rwandan government says it plans to shift from synthetic to biodegradable pesticides to halt the bee die-off. A 2016 United Nations report estimates 16% of pollinators are threatened with extinction. Arash Arbasadi, VOA News, Washington.
Back to East Africa, where Kenya now has the first free human breast milk bank. Babies in need are benefiting from breast milk donations and thriving. Mia Womersley reports.
At just 3 days old, Rose is a hungry baby. But feeding this appetite has not been without its complications. Rose was born at a Nairobi hospital a month and a half early, healthy but underweight. Because she was premature, Rose's mother, Sarah Wanjiku, couldn't produce the milk to feed her. Step in Kenya's first free human breast milk bank.
I was told that they had donor milk that is donated by other mothers, and I found it best to use that milk for the baby because she was very hungry and had not eaten for 3 days. They reassured me by telling me that it was properly tested and screened.
Save the Children estimates that around 200,000 Kenyan infants are born prematurely each year. Studies have shown breast milk helps premature and sick babies recover. The highly sterilised milk bank was set up in March by the Ministry of Health and the African Population and Health Research Centre, and depends on donors like Evelyn Wawira. She recently gave birth to her son, Tarek, and says she's producing more than enough milk to feed him.
They're just babies. It's not their fault. They don't have enough milk, or the mom is not there, or the mom doesn't have enough milk. As long as the baby can have it and it will save its life, why not? Just need to be kind about it.
It's hoped that the milk bank can be duplicated in other parts of Kenya. But for now, Sarah's just thankful to the women who helped her baby's start in life.
Mia Womersley of Reuters reporting. In other world news, the full U.S. House of Representatives will vote this week on the procedure of the impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump, addressing the White House argument that the probe has been illegitimate. Another administration official is to testify before House committees Tuesday about the president's phone call to Ukraine's president at the center of the impeachment probe. Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has scheduled a vote for Thursday, saying in a letter to fellow representatives that she wants to eliminate any doubt about the process. Pelosi says the impeachment inquiry resolution will affirm the ongoing and existing investigation, establish the procedures for hearings that are open to the American people, and sets forth due process rights for the president and his counsel. Meanwhile, hearings in the impeachment inquiry continue Tuesday. The House committee is set to hear from Alexander Vindman, an Army Lieutenant Colonel who is part of the National Security Council, who listened to the July 25th call between Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
I think we can infer from the White House opposition to Dr. Kupperman's testimony that they believe that his testimony would be incriminating of the president. It is also, I think, very plain, additional and powerful evidence of obstruction of Congress and its lawful function by the president that yet again, and even after a court decision affirming the right of Congress to proceed with this impeachment inquiry, the White House has obstructed the work of a co-equal branch of government.
Democrats are investigating whether Trump withheld badly needed aid to Ukraine in exchange for Zelensky's public promise to investigate Democrats and the Bidens. Trump insists there was no quid pro quo between him and Ukraine and has called his telephone call with Zelensky perfect. Now for something sweet, let's head to San Francisco, California, home of one of the world's oldest chocolate factories. VOA's Reginaldo Marcucci takes us inside the historic site, now a popular tourist destination and city landmark in Girardelli Square. VOA's Jackson Vunganyi narrates.
Domenico Gilardelli learned all about the chocolate when he was apprenticed to a local confectioner in Italy as a child. At the age of 20, him and his wife traveled to Uruguay to work in a chocolate and coffee business. A year later, the family moved to Lima, Peru, where they opened a pastry shop. Then, with the money earned, the family moved to San Francisco and started the Gilardelli Chocolate Company in 1852.
Everything seems to be so good. I will need to choose one. As someone addicted to chocolate, I am here to get one.
How often do you eat chocolate?
Every single day.
To get an idea of the success of Gilardelli's venture in 1866, the company imported 1,000 pounds of cocoa beans per year. As early as 1885, the company imported 450,000 pounds of cocoa beans. Gilardelli is one of the few chocolate companies in the United States that controls every aspect of their chocolate making process, rejecting up to 40% of the cocoa seeds shipped to select only the highest quality. The whole process of making chocolate can take a year, starting with the selection of seeds and ending with the packaging of chocolates. In 1967, the factory moved to San Leandro, across from the San Francisco Bay, and is home to other small businesses, restaurants, and even a hotel. But it is still the place known as the Chocolate Factory of San Francisco.
Jackson Vunganyi narrating that report produced by VOA's Reginaldo Marcucci. You're watching Africa 54. We'll be right back.
Could be French,
English,
but it begins.
Bantu?
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
I am Sheikh Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. Haider El-Ali has totally immersed himself in the fight against the devastating effect of deforestation, intensive farming, and rising salt levels due to climate change on Senegal's fragile mangrove ecosystem. The Mangrove Restoration Program, which El-Ali and Oceanium started in 2006 in southern Senegal, is the largest in the world, bringing private companies together to build solutions to overcome the damaging effect of climate change on the environment. Senegal has regained more than 10,000 hectares of mangroves, enabling villagers to cultivate rice on land they had previously lost when the trees disappeared. Next up, Americans take Halloween very seriously, and in Hollywood in particular, preparations for the festivities are full speed ahead. Retail analysts say dressing up for the annual Fright Fest and spending on other things associated with the event is a multi-billion-dollar industry. But this year, more people are looking for bargains. Costume rentals at Glendale Costumes cost between $50 and $150 for up to 3 days. Halloween spending is expected to reach $8.8 billion this season, down slightly from last year's $9 billion, but still almost record numbers. And finally, it's the kind of runway collaboration that Pakistani designers hope will help the country's growing fashion industry truly take off. Here at Fashion Pakistan Week, these models are literally wearing the fruits of an exciting new cross-cultural collaboration. They're showcasing outfits carrying the theme Kalash, a colorful cultural heritage with origins in Pakistan's north. A theme at Fashion Pakistan Week this year has been innovation, with garments on display that represent not just Pakistani culture, but also Western and European influences. And that's what's trending today.
The European Union agreed to delay Brexit until January 31st, 2020, as British Prime Minister Boris Johnson seeks a snap election to try to deliver on his Brexit deal. Johnson vowed never to request a Brexit extension, but was forced to do so after he was defeated in Parliament over the ratification of his divorce deal.
We will not allow this paralysis to continue, and one way or another we must proceed straight to an election. So later on this evening, the government will give notice of presentation for a short bill for an election on the 12th of December so that we can finally get Brexit done. And there is no support in the House, that we've heard earlier on from the benches opposite, for the WAB to proceed. But, Mr. Speaker, this House cannot any longer keep this country hostage.
The Brexit deadline has been delayed 3 times since British voters approved leaving the bloc in a 2016 referendum. More details from the daring U.S. military raid that took out Islamic State leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi Saturday. Once a powerful self-declared caliph, Baghdadi was found hiding in a tunnel. Cornered with no exit, he blew himself up and his 3 children. VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Bob has more on what U.S. officials picked up in the raid and how they plan to protect resources to keep the counter-ISIS fight going full steam ahead.
this is all that's left of the Islamic State leader's hideout, reduced to rubble by U.S. air power. U.S. forces took Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's remains from a tunnel somewhere under this wreckage, confirming his ID through DNA testing before burying him at sea. And top Pentagon officials revealed Monday Baghdadi wasn't the only one taken.
There were 2 adult males taken off the objective alive, and they're in our custody.
Officials are hopeful these men and the treasure trove of data collected from the compound will aid American forces and the Syrian Democratic Forces they're partnering with. Meantime, President Donald Trump has turned his focus to another asset, oil fields in northeast Syria.
But we're keeping the oil. Remember that. I've always said that. Keep the oil. We want to keep the oil. $45 million a month. Keep the oil.
Securing the oil fields is now part of America's mission, and Defense Secretary Mark Esper added U.S. forces would defend them from Russian and Syrian forces if necessary.
We want to make sure that SDF does have access to the resources in order to guard the prisons, in order to arm their own troops, in order to assist us with the Defeat ISIS missions.
A convoy of U.S. troops left Syria days ago amid cheers and taunts. But a U.S. defense official tells VOA another convoy of American forces re-entered Syria Sunday to help resupply troops and prepare for the withdrawal that President Trump wants. Putting more people in to protect these oil fields, are there going to be more troops now in Syria than there were before?
My expectation is that it'll be fewer than what we had before, and they will be going home.
But with forces flowing both in and out of Syria, it's unclear how long the withdrawal will take. Carla Babb, VOA News, the Pentagon.
From making so-called side deals with Ukraine to pulling U.S. forces from northeastern Syria, U.S. President Donald Trump has gone his own way when it comes to conducting U.S. foreign policy. But the Syria decision has sparked widespread opposition in Washington. And in the case of Ukraine, critics say Trump sidestepped career U.S. diplomats to further his own interests against a potential election rival. VOA's Jesusa Men-Oni reports on how the president's foreign policy decisions are stirring controversy in Washington.
Despite criticism, U.S. President Donald Trump is standing by his decision to move U.S. troops from the Syrian-Turkish border, where they fought alongside longtime Kurdish allies.
They stayed for almost 10 years. Let someone else fight over this long, blood-stained sand.
This as the top U.S. official to Syria appeared to distance himself from Trump's decision.
Were you consulted about the withdrawal of troops as was recently done?
I personally was not consulted at all.
Elsewhere on Capitol Hill, other diplomats testified about the Trump administration's delay in providing approved U.S. military assistance to Ukraine. A written statement by one described how the White House bypassed normal diplomatic channels to press Ukraine to investigate Democrats and the Bidens in return for military aid. Democratic lawmakers have denounced this.
The idea that vital military assistance would be withheld for such a patently political reason, for the reason of serving the president's reelection campaign, is a phenomenal breach of the president's duty to defend our national security.
Trump's actions on Ukraine could threaten his presidency as the impeachment inquiry continues.
We have agencies, we have areas of our government whose job it is to investigate those. And if President Trump wanted the Bidens investigated for their activities there, it should have been done through the diplomatic channels.
Those normal diplomatic channels have set the United States apart from countries whose policies are set by autocratic leaders, says terrorism expert Mike Newton.
Checks and balances where agencies push back against each other and really experienced smart policymakers wrestle with choices and consequences and diplomatic fallout and maybe military best practices.
When this process is bypassed, experts say U.S. credibility around the world is damaged.
If there are doubts about the president's decisions, which there are in the State Department and the Pentagon, in the intelligence community, as well as in the Congress, there's real questions about the cohesiveness of U.S. foreign policy and whether we have a real strategy.
Donald Trump was elected on promises to break with traditional U.S. foreign policy, and his supporters show no sign of abandoning him. But the impeachment inquiry and outcry over his Syria policy show there are limits to his approach. Jesus Emelni, VOA News, Washington.
Drones are being taught to deliver food and medical supplies to customers. Now, doctors and scientists at the University of Maryland at College Park are creating special custom-made drones that can literally save lives. Alexei Gorbachev has our story, narrated here by Anna Rice.
When doctors need to get somewhere fast, a helicopter is usually the way to go. But what about when doctors need to get things, like organs, to patients quickly? Doctors and scientists at the University of Maryland at College Park are testing drones as a cheap and fast way to get organs, like a kidney, to a Maryland woman who waited 8 years for a transplant.
It was a short flight, only about 3 miles, about 10 minutes of flight time. So in this demonstration phase, it wasn't really a great leap in capability. What it's really leading towards is the next generation of capability, which will be longer distances.
The first successful flight took place in Baltimore, home to a number of large hospitals.
This was the first illustration of a live organ transplant that was facilitated by an unmanned aerial system that will improve upon existing techniques and ultimately save lives.
The best things about drones is their size and speed. They can move faster than an ambulance, maneuvering through traffic, and even in some cases faster than manned helicopters.
When an organ becomes available, when a patient becomes a recipient, everything matches up. You'll be able to say go, and immediately it goes. It's on a timeline. It increases the viability of the organs and reduces cost.
Scientists hope that after more tests, the technology will be accepted and adapted in hospitals not only in the United States, but across the globe as well, creating an international network of donor organs.
The potential is around the world. You could literally have drones that would fly even hypersonic around the world and reduce the time from harvest of the organ to delivery to a patient to hours.
For now, there are many legal issues that scientists and specialists need to deal with before the technology can be fully popularized. But developers say the technologies that minimize the risks of medical drone flights already exist and should only take 2 to 5 years until they are fully tested and implemented. For Alexei Gorbachev in College Park, Maryland, Anna Rice, VOA News.
That's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a very good evening.